How's it going, Airsoft world? This is FoxHound, and I'm here to show you how to make a legitimate modified silencer for your Y&P or Tokyo Mori SOCOM Mark 23. So this is a very affordable and high-performing non-gas blowback airsoft pistol. It holds 25 rounds in the magazine approximately, and it comes with this Mach suppressor silencer unit. The first thing I need to note that makes the Mark 23 airsoft gun different than many other airsoft guns is the threading on the barrel. This is a 16mm clockwise thread. Most airsoft guns that you're going to find out there have a 14mm counterclockwise thread. So this might not really be super useful to you guys that have the typical 14mm counterclockwise thread, but if you can find or make an adapter for 16mm clockwise to 14mm counterclockwise, then this is a nice way to do a DIY affordable silencer that'll cost you about $10 to maybe $30 at most, and you get to have some fun building some stuff. Before we get too deep into this video, something I would like to note is that if you would like to buy any other suppressor for your Mark 23, you can buy a thread adapter that will adapt the 16mm clockwise threads to 14mm counterclockwise threads. This part costs about $10 and can save you a lot of work. If you'd rather throw the money at getting a new suppressor, then go ahead and buy the thread adapter. If you'd like to learn how to turn the stock suppressor into something actually useful, then continue watching this video. The Y&P SOCOM Mark 23 comes with this particular suppressor. So something that I don't like about this, and what makes it useless in my opinion, is it comes with a spring-loaded inner barrel, okay? And while this does increase feet per second, it actually decreases accuracy to the point that I have no use for this in the field. With just a few household tools, some spray paint stuff, you can actually turn this into a working suppressor. You can buy this for $10 on evike.com. So if you're like me and you lost yours in the woods while playing a game, you can buy a replacement for $10 and you can modify this to actually perform a function other than increasing feet per second and decreasing accuracy. I'm going to use this Decibel Meter to show you what kind of effect it has. There are many airsoft videos that say build a silencer, build a suppressor out of anything for any gun, and they have no way of actually showing you what kind of effect it's having on the gun. It says listen to the difference. You've got guys making videos out of Crayola markers, PVC pipe, and it's taking forever to do that stuff. You've got guys that are using lathes to design things and cutting up bicycle handlebar foam, and they're saying just listen to the difference. Well, this is a device that you can pick up at any musical instrument store, a guitar center, or an electronic shop like a Radio Shack, and this actually measures loudness. So I'm going to show you a difference in what it sounds like without the suppressor, what it sounds like with the stock suppressor, and then what kind of difference there is with the modified suppressor using a decibel meter. You may notice we're in an acoustically treated space. This is going to help us take some legitimate measurements of what kind of volume this airsoft gun is putting off. So first, let's go ahead and fill it up. And you'll see that to begin with, this is a pretty quiet airsoft pistol. So I'm going to let the decibel meter settle and get our base reading, and then I'll fire some test shots. Now, here's with the suppressor added, stock. Again, I'll let the decibel meter settle. let's mod this and see what kind of difference we can make here. Okay, here are the items you're going to need in order to modify your stock suppressor. Again, this is the $10 one from evic or evike.com. You'll see it's got the spring-loaded inner barrel. That's just total crap. First of all, you're going to need some kind of foam. This is just a 1/4 inch piece of foam that I found in some kind of packing material. It was out of some electronics box or something. You're going to need a knife, or if you can afford it, some kind of Dremel tool. You'll see later. You're going to need a set of epoxy glue. You're going to need a ruler to take some measurements, a pencil to make some markings, a cup of steaming hot water near boiling. If you're not sure how to make water very hot, quit watching this video and get your back to school. You're going to need some kind of sandpaper. What I have here is silicon carbide waterproof abrasive paper, electro-coated, whatever. This is what I had in my toolkit. If you want to get fancy, you can use a chalk line, although it's really not necessary. I'm going to attempt to use it to make some lines on this foam for cutting. And I recommend a set of gloves of some kind to make sure that you have a good grip on things. Most importantly, you're going to need this penny. This penny is the key to your success. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is soak the base of this mock suppressor because I need to get it off. This is glued on here tight, so I'm going to just let this sit for a moment and soak up the heat. And I'm actually going to cut so that you don't have to sit here watching this soak for about 5 minutes or so. Okay, so you may have had to add a little more hot water while you're waiting for this thing to, loosen up a little bit, whatever. Let's get started here on opening this thing up. So I'm going to take my knife and try and very carefully pry in along these edges. Let me sweep this away so you can see what I'm doing. The reason that we're heating it up is to make the plastic just a little more pliable so that we can slip that knife in under that edge, under that bottom edge, and you can see what I'm doing right in there. And there we go. So, if you're lucky, you haven't completely destroyed everything. And you'll see what comes out is this inner barrel junk, which, is useless. And you're finally left with a plastic tube with a threaded end cap. Here's how you'll want to cut your foam. Now note, again, this is 1/4 inch foam. How do I know it's 1/4 inch foam? Because I measured it, and it's a 1/4 inch. Considering this foam has a density to it, what I've found is really all you need is 3 inches. Okay? I'll take my ruler. Let me show you 3 inches from the straight edge over here. I'm going to take just a little bit of this black paper here. Set that down, my 3 inch mark. Real scientific. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Super scientific like. This is how NASA makes their measurements. I'm going to double check, like so. And now it's time for my chalk line. So if you don't have a chalk line, you just are going to have to cut across it. So all this chalk line does is you just lay it from point A to B, and that's going to give us a blue line. Good enough. So let's double check those measurements and make sure that's okay. Yep, that's about 3 inches. Let's double check this. That's slightly wider. Let me just trim that down a smidge. Just a teeny smidge. You'll see that right about here there's a little rib in the suppressor, and when you look down inside there you'll see, I don't know if you can see in this video, but there's actually a little plastic rib that's going to make it difficult to get stuff down in there. So you can't quite just pass that down in there. What we're going to have to do is cut this up into sections. So here's how I'm going to do my super scientific measurements here. Again, I'm going to line this up right about to the end of the suppressor and just cut at that rib section. And I'm going to cut this in half. So now I have 2 pieces for the front part, and on this back side I'm going to cut off the excess over here. I'm going to leave this actually in just one large piece for now and see what happens. So all the hard work is done. Now is the easy part. All you'll do is you'll take these foamy pieces and you'll see that if you've cut the length right, they actually just kind of sit in there nice and snug. And you want to make sure that they line up. So see, check that out now. This is what we've done here. Some people may be watching this video and asking, why doesn't this idiot cut baffles into his pieces? I'll tell you why. This isn't a high velocity projectile. Okay, we're not shooting a bullet over the speed of sound. We're shooting a plastic ball at, 300 feet per second here. And all that you want to do is turn this into an acoustically treated chamber. Okay, we don't need to have baffles in there that break this up into sections. You just need foam that's going to absorb the sound and try and trap the sound within this plastic chamber. Okay, so now that your foam is cut into these pieces that you're going to use, we can just set these aside for the moment. Along with this end cap, just put this somewhere safe for now. Now it's time for Abraham Lincoln to do his work. What we need to do is open up this end here, because unless you have an airsoft gun that's manufactured by NASA, there's no way that the BB is going to come out of the end of the barrel and fly straight out of here. So what we need to do is open this up in order to prevent the BB from clipping the end of the suppressor here. So I'll take my penny and my pencil, and I'm going to center this as best as I can, as scientifically as I can. That looks about good to me. And I'll make a nice tight circle around that penny. Here's where your knife or Dremel tool come in handy. If you're using your knife, don't stab yourself. Be careful, okay? Jeez, see how easy it is? So like, here's what you want to do now, is just start carving out this hole. So as I'm getting closer and closer to that pencil mark, I want to be very careful, because there is no undo button in reality. Okay, that's close enough for me. Now it's time to work with our sandpaper. I don't want to destroy all of the sandpaper at once, so I'm going to just tear off a little bit because it gets used up pretty quick. And just start going around. And you're immediately going to feel it rounding out those edges. This is not the most high quality plastic. So this is where a Dremel tool would really come in handy. If you have a Dremel tool, you don't have to go through any of this stuff. I mean, you could just basically carve out the middle really nice and smooth. You just put the suppressor in a vise and just take the Dremel and just go around. So now I'm going to pay extra careful attention to my pencil lines here and make sure that I'm not exceeding them. I'm at this point where I'm just trying to make a nice round exit for the suppressor here. I want to have nice smooth edges, so I'm putting a little bit of work into to make sure that I'm happy with the quality of this mod. That's starting to look really good to me. So I'm gonna just do one last pass with my silicon carbide paper here and just round everything out. Make it look a little more machined, make it look a little more natural. It's feeling very smooth at this point. I'm gonna come up at like sort of a 45-degree angle around these edges to smooth them out. Give it a little bit of a cleaner look. And voila! That's about it. You really don't want to do too much more to that. Next, it's going to be black spray paint time in just a moment. So I'm going to lightly rough this up because I want to spray paint over the whole thing. And I want it to have a more weathered kind of texture to it, and also the paint is going to grip better when you spray paint it after sanding. And this goes for pretty much any airsoft item, any item in general. Okay, so I'm not going to show you how to spray paint this. I'm going to assume you have a clue as to how to spray paint something. After some careful spray painting, you'll see that we've got a nice matte finish mock suppressor here. And same for the end cap. You want to match that end cap so that it looks, you know, at least halfway decent when you're done with it. Make sure that you put some kind of paper wad or something in the threads when you're spray painting it to make sure that you don't get any kind of spray paint in there. Let's finish this up. We're going to need our foam that we've cut into pieces. We're going to need our epoxy, and we're going to need a plastic tray or piece of cardboard or some kind of thing on which we're going to mix the epoxy. So first, you'll see that when I roll these up, they fit perfectly inside this tube. What I'm going to do is need to put these two past that rib. So I'll start pressing that down in there as evenly as I can. And I'll take a pencil or my screwdriver or whatever I've got and try and evenly press it over that rib that's about halfway through. So it might be hard to see in there because it's dark. Please use your imagination. What you want to do is press it all the way down so it's snug against the end of the suppressor. You don't want to smash it, you just want to press it against the end of the tip here. So that one's all the way down. Let's get this second piece in there. Repeat the process, make sure that it's rolled nicely in there, and you'll see that the ends just touch each other right there. And go ahead, press that down into our suppressor tube chamber contraption. We want to get that past that rib as well. And you're going to need to do just a little bit of massaging to make sure that everything fits in there snug and right. So don't be afraid to reach in and move things around. Fortunately, there's nothing permanent going on here, unless you get your finger stuck in the tube. We are just basically making sure that the foam seats nicely towards the front of the tube and past that rib. You want to have a nice even seating when you look through there. You want to make sure that it's not sticking up or sticking out, and that the BB, as it's traveling through, will not touch anything. Now it's time for the last final piece of foam, which really I see no reason to cut this into pieces because there's no rib to get past. We can just fold that in half and slide that on down in there. And so that should end up sitting pretty much flush with the end of the tube. So I'll take my pencil, and again I'm just going to be peeking in through there and making sure that I have a clean line of sight. Anything that looks like it's sticking out or potentially obtrusive to the BB, go ahead and roll it out. You know, it takes some massaging. Okay, I've reached a point where I'm satisfied. So now it's time to epoxy the end of the suppressor back together. In case you don't know how this stuff works, this is some pretty noxious chemical stuff, okay? You need to be really careful, read the directions, make sure you have a clue of what you're doing, and don't f***ing eat this shit. Don't eat this. This is not your Elmer's glue from when you were in kindergarten, okay? Basically what happens is there are two compounds that unto themselves are not sticky. But when you mix them together, it becomes extremely sticky for almost any substances. You'll also notice that it doesn't smell so pleasant. So you want to make sure that you work in a relatively well ventilated area. Next, you want to just take a Q-tip and just mix these two compounds together. And this is when you're developing your glue here. And this is a totally permanent weatherproof glue. If you need anything glued that you don't want unglued, epoxy is good stuff. But again, you can't eat it. So I'll take my Q-tip that's coated in the substance. One last look, make sure I'm okay with it. It's about as good as anything's gonna get. And I'm going to put the glue just on the inside of this lip right here. And I'm sort of rotating the Q-tip as I'm going around to make sure that I get a nice even spread. You want to be certain you don't get any of that stuff inside the threads. You'll just basically ruin everything. So I'll go just one more time. Just a little bit more of the stuff. You don't want to overdo it because you'll have the glue flying all over the place. So that should be sufficient. And now, you want to go ahead and seat that on there. Press it nice and tight. Make sure it looks just about as even as it can be. Just for safety's sake, I'm going to put a little bit more along the outer edge and then respray with the spray paint. So this step might not be necessary, but I'm going to go through with it anyways. And there you have it, boys and girls. Now all you need to do is wait for that epoxy to dry. According to the label, that's going to fully set in 24 hours. It says leave undisturbed for 20 minutes. So let's let that chill out and come back and take some measurements. Alright guys, it's time to do the final test and see how the numbers add up. We've already done the testing with the Mark 23 without the suppressor, with the stock suppressor. Let's add the modified suppressor and see how that sounds. For those of you that actually own the Y&P or Tokiyomori Mark 23, I sincerely hope that this was a useful video for you. For those of you that do not own any of these fine pistols, I hope you enjoyed watching and learned something anyways. Remember, when you're playing Airsoft, leadership is the key to winning games. I use the acronym LEADERSHIP to help make sure that I'm doing the right thing at the right time. L stands for loyalty to my team. D stands for duty, to do what the team commander has instructed me to do. R is for respect, to always treat others on the field and off the field with respect. S is for selflessness, to make sure that we're sharing these things. Airsoft is a luxury. This is not something that we deserve. This is a luxury that we can afford. H is for honor, to honor the Airsoft community. And know that when you take your Airsoft gun out of your home, you're acting on behalf of not just yourself, but the entire Airsoft community. And anything you do in public will reflect upon the community as a whole, so act with honor. I is for integrity, to call your hits in the field, and also to do the right thing at the right time. If you see someone not calling their hits, say something about it, but don't necessarily fight them. And P is for personal courage, and that's what it takes to win an Airsoft game, to run out in the field and get shot by a bunch of plastic BBs. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and happy airsofting, guys.